Good morning, everybody. My name is Adam Smith from Nobel Media. It is my very great pleasure to welcome Aaron Ciechanover to the screen. Hopefully, with the press of a button, he can join us. Aaron, it's very good to see you.
Good morning, everybody.
So let's just set the scene. You are speaking from your office at the Technion in Israel, correct?
Indeed, in the Faculty of Medicine.
Lovely. And I don't know any laureate, I think, who travels as widely as you do. So how have you found these lockdown months?
Actually, there are many advantages. I'm sitting daily with my people. We are writing grants and papers poured out of the lab. Very different from what I got used to. And I suspect that once the sky will be opened, I'll still remain grounded. I start to like it.
Because this is the first time you've been grounded in any sense since they awarded you the prize in, 2004?
You're right, even before, when the system that we discovered became kind of more known to people. So even before the Nobel Prize, I started to travel frequently, both on academic occasions and industrial drug development events and so on. But the last 4 months, I must tell you, I truly like it. I'm not sure that my wife likes it so much because I'm too much at home also. But otherwise, it's fun. Really, I pay much attention to my lab, to the experiment, to the students. I see them all the time. I'm here the whole day. It's different, but beneficial and has a lot of advantages.
Yes. Yes, well, yes, I guess our families are getting fed up with us all in our various ways. But good. Okay, so I'm going to start by asking some questions myself, and then I'm going to open out to the audience. And I just once again like to remind the audience that you can ask questions using the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. And we especially encourage questions from younger scientists and students. So let's cut straight to the chase. We've entitled the session, "Are we in the midst of a knowledge crisis?" And certainly people talk about this a lot. We're deluged with information, if not knowledge. And we have examples all around us of people making what might be thought to be rather strange decisions. For instance, in the case of vaccine hesitancy, where people are avoiding using vaccines in quite large numbers. But would you say we are in the midst of a crisis of knowledge?
Well, I don't know a crisis, but we are in the midst of a change because of the flood of the information and so on. So let's divide the question into some pieces because it's a too big cake to swallow at one time. The information is flooding in an unbelievable way, but and scientists are involved in it, and many of the scientists have moved from searching mechanisms and underlying mechanisms of diseases to kind of fishing in the swamp. You know, you are throwing your bait and maybe something will be caught onto the hook. I grew up in the old generation when the information was not that easily available, computer era and so on, and we were forced, and luckily so, to ask questions about mechanisms. I think that information is a technical advantage. We should absolutely use it. I can bring you one example of what I call reverse medicine. If you want, we see it nowadays in the COVID era, in the Corona time, when people are trying all kinds of drugs that are already available for other purposes, and they're trying to repurpose. You know, we heard the famous fake story about hydroxychloroquine, and now dexamethasone, the steroid, is coming up in a more positive way, and so on and so forth. And the idea is very simple. You know, you can take, for example, all the people in the world that are taking a certain drug, let's say metformin, which is a drug that is used for diabetes. And ask yourself, using just information, are those people suffering from some diseases more, or are they protected from some diseases? And all of a sudden you discover that all the people in the world out of the population that take metformin, the frequency of prostate cancer or breast cancer or not or something is lower. And then you say, well, it can be coincidental, but it can be causative. So maybe let's go now to metformin and ask ourselves directly, does metformin protect people against? So there is a huge use for information, but I think that scientists like me shouldn't do it. It's more a technical digging. I'm not interested in that.
So you think that in fact the technology is making it easier to do what you might call, I mean, maybe bad science is the wrong term, but at least easy science, which isn't so much hypothesis.
Yeah, I think that again, I want to stress it's extremely useful, but I don't think that scientists should kind of think of the real problems of using the information in order to advance our knowledge, in order to develop new drugs, in order to understand the universe, and so on and so forth. I myself don't want to do it. I want to have the data sets available to me, but I don't want to generate them.
But what about communicating them? Because one of the things is that, as we know, it's easier to surround people with information, and a lot of information is coming out of science, but people aren't necessarily equipped to deal with it.
Yeah, that's the role of the scientists and the press together. It should be a collaborative effort. We are exposed these days to huge amount of news, and many of those news are faked, as we learned already. Politicians are telling us about science, and so on and so forth. And science is too serious, because at the end of the day, nowadays, for example, in the corona, it's our health and the health of our fellow citizens, and so on and so forth. So science should be very accurate, and we should report it very accurately. And the issue is, of course, of scientists to take part, and scientists somehow, many of them, like my colleagues, tend to close themselves in ivory towers and say, you know, our role is to generate the science and somebody will disseminate it, yes or no, we shall. But this is not true. We have to bring the public to our side, because at the end of the day, it will be the public pressure that will pressurize the politician to fund science and so on. We are living in one ecosystem. It's not a separate entity. And I think that journalists should really, not journalists, communication people at large, should really collaborate and make science interesting to the people, because people are interested in corruption and in the, I don't know, in all kind of yellow type of news. And bringing science to the people is an art. You have to simplify it. You have to make it accessible. People have to understand what you are doing. I remember a good friend of mine who unfortunately died, Günter Blobel, a Nobel Laureate from the Rockefeller University, said, you need to explain your science to your grandmother, and only if she understands it, it means that you understand it. So, so I think that this is a serious sentence, a serious statement. We need to make it simple, accessible, and this is also something, a tool to attract young people to science, to study technology, to become engineers, which at the end will push the economy of their own countries. And so it's a big cycle here, the news. It's not just the news. It's much more than that, much deeper than that.
And during these times of coronavirus, scientists have been rather thrust into the limelight in connection with politicians. And you've mentioned the connection between scientists and politicians. It's an interesting relationship, because in a way, scientists are being given the blame, if you like, for everything that politicians are doing, because the politicians are saying we're acting on the advice of the scientists. But it puts the scientists in a very central role, which they can't quite control. How do you feel the relationship between science and politics is working?
I think that politicians should consult scientists, of course, but you know, politicians have other considerations. Some are relevant and some are irrelevant. The irrelevant ones are related to the re-election, being likened by the people, but the relevant ones are not always scientific. You know, countries are very different from one another. Poland is more Catholic, Israel is Jewish, there are different ethnic groups, sensitivities, cultural sensitivities, and politicians have to see the whole landscape. There are things that are not tolerated by certain ethnic groups, that are not acceptable to them traditionally, and you shouldn't break these walls of culture, of ethnicity. Actually, this adds a lot to our richness of culture and being different from one another. But at the end of the day, politicians shouldn't distort the scientific fact. So you have to channel them into the more general considerations of running a country with all what it takes.
So yeah, and as you say,
Unfortunately,
it's an
politicians don't always do it, but
as you say, it's an ecosystem. So we have a question from Anna Frankus from Jagiellonian University in Krakow. And she is worried by the fact that often celebrity opinion can be much more valuable amongst the general public than the opinion of an expert or a scientist. Is there anything we can do about that? Should we embrace it? How do we work with that?
Well, people like stars and they like football players, which is okay, and basketball players, and they listen to them, and movie stars and television stars. But again, science is science. The beauty of science, I think that nature is indifferent to us. We should remember it. Our role in science, and that also shows beautifully on the Nobel medal of the two beautiful ladies, the relationship between nature and science. The role of science is to unravel the secrets of Mother Nature that holds it close to her chest, and she's not easy unraveling them. But nature is indifferent to us. If there will be tomorrow a disaster and humankind will be erased from the face of Earth, nature will continue. The cows will keep on eating the grass and giving milk, and the snakes will continue crawling on the rocks, and the sun will rise and the moon will. So at the end of the day, because nature, unlike any other area in life, is indifferent to us, we cannot lie, we cannot distort, we cannot convolute it. We should adhere to the facts and use it to our benefit. And therefore, you know, you can listen to whoever you like, but you need, as an intelligent person, to equip yourself with judging tools. Is what I'm hearing now true or untrue?
Well, and that's not so easy to do. You know, we learn a certain amount of that at school, but in many fields, it's hard to know whether what you're hearing is trustworthy or not, unless you're trained in that field.
You're right. When I was a kid, there was no Wikipedia, and now I try to keep myself away from Wikipedia and go to trustable sources. Science, of course, is open to me, so I can go directly. But even in other areas, I'm trying to use in history, in philosophy, in any area, even in music, in any other area that I'm kind of interested, the real news, and to judge for myself. That's the difference between the human species and any other species that walks on the face of planet. I mean, we have a brain, and we need to think and to judge and to analyze and to dissect and to come to our own conclusion. I cannot help it, but I think that people should all the time close their eyes and ask themselves, is it really true? And do I have tools to check it? You know, I think that that one of my attributes in science, not only mine, but I believe that I don't trust people. I can hear, and then I go back, close myself behind my door, and go and check. I'm a disbeliever in nature. I am a disbeliever. And it's very important in science, because people tell you, oh, somebody found something, you should follow it. So before you put your whole lab or graduate student or on a track, you should really see that this is really something, this is really a tip of the rope that is worth following. Because otherwise, you know, there are so many red herrings flying around, also in science, that, you know, you can find yourself wasting all your career chasing air.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, a trained, curious disbeliever is obviously the kind of the epitome of the scientist.
Curiosity.
Yeah. But trust is so important. I mean, it's been mentioned a few times. Let's start, but I'd like to discuss trust a little bit. Let's start with a question from Jaya, who is a PhD student in biology, again at Jagiellonian University. She wonders whether during this coronavirus crisis, you think that trust in scientists is increasing, whether that is one of the side benefits.
I think that people realize that at the end, the solution will come for science. Developing a vaccine is science. We just saw last week, we all heard about it, about two of the most maybe famous leading periodicals in medicine, the New England Journal of Medicine and the Lancet, are withdrawing papers that were accepted at haste. about the effect of either one of them was hydroxychloroquine, the other one about antihypertensive drugs, and so on, because the sample was fake, the sample of the patient. You know, people suspected that the company, Surgisphere, couldn't have collected the data that they claimed they did of patients in Africa. They had detailed clinical records of in hospitals that do not exist even. So, therefore, you know, at the end of the day, as I said, it's the truth, whether hydroxychloroquine acts or doesn't act. And in order to do it, to know it, you need to run a reliable clinical trial with a control group of patients that don't get it, follow them, the same group of patients, and so on and so forth. So on one hand, I cannot tell you what will be the final outcome, Adam. On one hand, people realize that at the end of the day, the answer and the drugs and the vaccine will come from science. And science takes its time because you need control groups and so on. But on the other hand, events like that really shake the trust. And I hope that we shall be able to correct in the way and get back on the highway from the off-road that we took.
So how do you build trust with groups of people? I mean, I know you're very active in traveling around and meeting all sorts of different sorts of people around the world, people who are scientists, but people who are non-scientists. What do you think is the key to building trust with people?
You know, what I'm doing, even in my own group, you know, there is a lot of not only fake science, but people fabricate data, and they publish fabricated data. And I'm very much concerned about it. So, you know, I do it always, whether I'm talking to my own group in our weekly group meeting, or whether I'm talking to a 5,000 audience in Beijing or in Shanghai. And I try to explain them why we are in science again and again. We are not in science in order to become a professor. We are in science in order to play chess with, you know, God, nature, whoever, in whatever you believe, and to unravel the secrets, not only because of curiosity, but because at the end of the day, we are going to generate products, I hope, that will benefit humankind. And progress and lies don't hold water. You know, you can lie once, but at the end of the day, if the drug doesn't work, somebody will discover it. So I try to explain to people what is our role in science. Why are we there at all? And I think that I have my impact. You know, many other of my colleagues are doing the same. And we are trying to clean our you know, environment from all kinds of contaminants, which is not easy these days. It's not easy. But at the end of the day, there are excellent people around us. Brilliant young scientists are growing, and it's wonderful to see them. And I hope that in those people, we implanted the seed of truth of why we are here.
I love that image of playing chess with nature. So it's a kind of outwitting of nature to get her to reveal her secrets or his secrets. Yes, it's a beautiful image.
Yeah, you think about, you know, Adam, I look carefully. I have it even on my desk here, the medal, a replica of the medal. You know, these two beautiful ladies. Think about it. The one, nature has a veil that covers her face, and science is coming and unveils it, and she's holding her secrets in a cornupia underneath her arm, and science tries to get there. I mean, the story of these two ladies on the other side of the Nobel medal is a wonderful story. It tells you the whole game, the whole role of how science and nature are related. They are two different entities, but they talk heavily to one another, and each has its own roles. But we should remember that nature is indifferent from what we are doing. Nature is there. It has been there for millions of years. And we came in, we are trying to understand what's going on, to intervene, to change in case, you know, to modify, to edit, to do all kinds of things in biology, to drill holes in the ground, to take oil out. You know, we are trying to do all kinds of things, but at the end of the day, nature doesn't care about us much, doesn't care about what we publish, of course, and we should really respect it. Therefore, we should really respect it and be humble in front of the secrets of nature.
So people are very often discuss how they should communicate science. People worry about this. And indeed, there's a question now from Simon from the Polish press agency about whether you're noticing any change in the way that people are communicating science in the pandemic. I suppose, but more generally, is what you just said, getting people to understand why you do science and what you're trying to achieve, the key to science communication in your book?
Yeah, and people also have to understand that science is limited. I think that the coronavirus is a very good example. It came out of the blue, and we know very little about it. So people have to accept also an answer that says, I do not know. We are studying it. We don't know a lot about infectivity, whether children can spread the disease or not. We don't understand this, the complication, the blood clotting, the Kawasaki-like syndrome that affects the vasculature. We don't understand a lot of things. We don't understand whether we are in a second wave. We don't understand whether the virus is going to mutate like the influenza virus. And each year we shall have to have a new vaccine, or the virus, the genome will be stable and we can use one vaccine forever. We are learning it, and people have to understand we are not gods. We are scientists. We are human beings like everybody else. We are walking human beings. We are using tools in order to unravel what's going on. And the unknown about the coronavirus much exceeds what we currently know about it. And it will take time to understand what's going on. We are doing it in a very fast way, but we should be very careful not to hurry too much. The case of the New England Journal of Medicine and the Lancet is a case in study.
I suppose this is nicely actually connected with two questions that have just come in from Victoria and from Julia, both of whom are asking for any tips you have on how to become a creative scientist. And I suppose it's directly connected really with the way what you've just said about communicating what a scientist is trying to do. What would you say to that?
I always say that if I'd known the secret, I wouldn't have told it to anybody. I would have gone back to Stockholm for a second time. But there is really not a recipe. I got a lot at home from my parents. Books were always there. My father always never answered my question. He always pushed me back to the book, and he said, "If you don't find the answer in the book, come back to me." And and reading and learning and curiosity, again, being not only a disbeliever, but being very curious about it. My career is a little bit convoluted. I am a physician. I was trained as a surgeon, and then all of a sudden I realized that surgery is beautiful, but it will not carry me and my curiosity for 40 years of career. And I decided with no previous education to try science and to see whether I will see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I was lucky to have a wonderful mentor. Mentorship is also a critical important. Being with good people is I think, one of the critically important keys. Avram Hershko, with whom later I also was awarded the Nobel Prize. He was an excellent biochemist, asking questions, and also when I had to pick my PhD. So I departed medicine and I went to do my PhD in biochemistry, during which we discovered what we discovered. And when I scanned or screened for mentors, Avram was the riskiest because everybody knew exactly what they want me to do. And Avram said, it's an adventure. I think that there is something, it may be existing, but maybe it does not exist at all. And let's start and explore it. And so I liked very much the adventurous type of approach. And then even later on, when I finished my PhD, and Avram convinced me to stay, I say, no, I don't stay. I have to fly out of the nest. I want to be independent. And again, you go to the best places. And I went to MIT, which, it's one of the leading institutions in the world. Again, to one of the leaders in cell biology, Harvey Lodish. And again, being with good people is infectious, it's contagious. The knowledge just sticks to you. And you run around and every problem you ask and you consult, it's like interaction. And therefore, I'm very sorry, I have to go back to your introduction about running this meeting in a Zoom, though questions are coming. There is no substitute for live, close interaction with people. I call it the noise of the corridors, the lounge. The lounge is, whenever I design, now I design here a new cancer center, the lounge is in the center of every laboratory where people can get together, have coffee, ask questions, discuss their problems. Because otherwise you don't do it spontaneously. It's only when you sit, it comes.
I agree. And I
completely
agree.
There are many ingredients here, but being with good people, being curious from the very beginning are critical.
And I agree about live meetings, but I think, Aaron, I have to say that as Zoom meetings go, you do a good job in bringing people as close as possible to your office. So your enthusiasm comes across. What you just said I think takes us in different directions. First of all, you mentioned at the beginning that the goal of the scientist is not to become a professor. And what you've talked about really is following your curiosity and taking risks. Is it important, if you want to be a good scientist, to take more risks and fewer safe bets? I mean, it's difficult. You have to be brave.
I don't know about courage, but you need to take risks, because otherwise you will find yourself on the highway, and the highway was paid before you, and many cars are going through it daily, so you will be just another car. You need to take risk, and nowadays it's a little bit of a problem because there is the tenure system, and you're given a limited time to get your permanent, in Europe, I'm talking the European system, the Polish system. I'm on the scientific advisory board of the International Institute of Molecular and Cell Biology in Warsaw, so I'm also aware of what's going on in Poland. I'm coming to Poland rather frequently. You need to take risks, because if you want to discover something that was undiscovered before, that you don't know whether it is there at all, you need to take the unpaved road. And I remember myself during my tenure decision time, and I said to myself, if I'm not good enough and they will not tenure me, fine. Well, I could fall back on surgery. I can always operate. So I had kind of a fallback. But I said, if I'm not good enough, then why should I stay there anyway? I'll do something else. In order to make an impact, I'm not talking Nobel Prize. This is crazy to think even of. Or any big accolade, but in order to do an impact, to have an impact, to leave the world differently than the world that you entered, you need to take the unpaved road, and the unpaved road will take you somewhere you don't know. Something is waiting for you behind the corner that is unexpected. It's a must. It's a must, and you have to learn to fail. And therefore, I always tell people, don't call it a failure, call it a lesson. Because if you design an experiment and it fails, go back to the board, see what happened. The idea may have been wrong, the reagent may have been wrong, your two hands are left rather than right, and you failed manually. There are many reasons, and then you repeat it, you change one parameter, and so on. And that's how I teach my students too. That's how we work with the students. Even now, on every 10 experiments, 9 fail, but we need the one that is successful. So handling frustration, and it's all part of this riding the unpaved road.
It's a nice thought, the unpaved road. The paved road has been explored too much, has been laid before you, beating your own track.
It's not fun in science.
Okay, another theme that you touched upon is the fact that you were a doctor. And Disha from the Medical University of Warsaw wants to know whether you recommend that there are more physician scientists in the future.
Yes, actually, this is a touchy question. I'll start on the personal. I was in surgery, and we were married already and had a family, and all of a sudden I came to my wife with this crazy idea that I'm not satisfied and I'm going to become a student again, and rather than bringing a salary home, I'm going to pay tuition fees out of her salary. So it was a difficult decision. It's leaving career, leaving friends. It's not easy, but that's your gut feeling, and that's what you want to do. And she was encouraging, and I did it. I think that physician scientists have a huge advantage. And here in my medical school, I really foster and nurture them. We have a special program which I really push the Polish to develop to. It's called the MD-PhD program. It's a combined rank. It takes longer, not 7 years, but 10 or 12 years. We take the most talented people. I was kind of, one of the founders of this program here. I have always MD PhD students in my lab. They are superb. I think that me being a physician, though I'm not practicing it, gives me not only the language of medicine, and not only the collaboration of physicians, the pathologists that I need all the time, but also my research. Now we are deep in cancer, in models of cancer, and we correlate it with the pathological. We have now a big discovery on something in cancer. And I have a leg in the world of medicine. And the medical school is next to the hospital. We have here the biggest hospital in the northern part of Israel, more than 1,000 beds. And I'm there all the time. Physicians are coming and going. We submit grants together. I think that we are doing still basic research, but it's clinically applied. And as you know, and you witnessed in Stockholm, when we were in the ambassador's home, a Swedish patient, the drug that was developed based on our discovery just came to the market, Johan Oskarsson, and he came to thank us. And we never developed it. We had nothing to do with the drug. We didn't develop it. But he was dying actually in the Karolinska Hospital of a multiple myeloma, of a type of blood leukemia. And the drug was flown to Sweden. It was the last minute of his life. The priest was already called for last confession near his bed. And he came to the party, healthy, strong, to thank us for giving him his life on a silver platter. This epitomizes more than anything else what we are doing. And I don't know what is the drug. I didn't develop it, but the drug targeting one of the enzymes that we discovered. So this shows you the chain. You don't have to do the work. It's like building a building. You put one brick, somebody else come put the second brick, then the electrician come put the electric line, the computer line, the air condition, whatever is needed. It's an enterprise. It's a system that everybody you publish and it becomes the public domain. And for me, it was a closing of a cycle. I left medicine as a practicing physician that treats individually patient, and all of a sudden somebody shows up, symbolizes the fact that they can affect the lives of millions of people worldwide without even knowing them, by not even developing a drug, but putting one brick in the building of drug development. So I think that being a physician is wonderful. It gives you also, you can do whatever you like. You can be a neurosurgeon, a cardiologist, you can be a village physician, a family physician, you can be a scientist. It's a platform, it's a broad platform from which you can jump anywhere you like. I'm wholehearted for it.
Thank you very much indeed. Lovely. We have lots of questions coming in, but I'd just like to remind anybody who joined since I last said it, if you want to ask a question, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen and type your question. So what you just described is a beautiful coexistence of medicine and basic science working very nicely. And you've also talked earlier about the need for a kind of ecosystem, or that we exist in an ecosystem. Piotr from the University of Warsaw asks, I think, a rather difficult question. He says that, what can science do to solve the other big problems we're facing now, or some of them, such as aging societies, income inequality, huge societal problems? Where does the scientist role in all that lie?
Yeah, it's a very interesting one. Let's separate it again. Let's cut the cake into several pieces. One piece is, I'm a biologist, so of course I'm into biology and medicine, but science is much wider. We have climate change. We forgot about it. It's going to destroy us. We are not going to have a planet in 100 years. I'm very adamant about it. It's severe. It's really severe. Think about countries in which the weather is heating up, the crops, the drought, the emission of gases, of carbon dioxide. Actually, during the COVID time, we enjoyed a little bit of a pause in emission of poisonous gases, the deforestation. So science has a lot to do. But on top of it, science also has to deal with ethical issues. Personalized medicine, this is one subject that I wanted to talk about during our planned lecture my planned lectures in Poland. The ethical issues, we are now sequencing our DNA, our future. what's embedded in my DNA? Should I know the diseases that I am going to face, whether I'm carrying a gene for Alzheimer or not? Should the insurance company know about it? Should the government know about it? Should my wife know about it? Should I tell my children about their own future that I inherited to them? There are numerous issues. And then it's our role in society about equality. Look what's going on in the United States now. And it's not just, I'm not talking about the awful, cruel, unacceptable violence of the American police, but scientists walk up again and show us, put a mirror in front of our eyes to tell us that Black people are absent from the scientific arena. They are not there. We should do any effort to correct it. Women, again, are not there. I remember during the 2004 Nobel awarding ceremony, Michael, the chairman of the Schulman, the chairman of the Nobel Foundation at the time, talked about the absence of women from the Nobel arena. And it's still going on. And it's our role to do it because we are promoting science. We are sitting in universities. We are promoting in faculty. We are accepting them initially as young scientists and so on. It's unacceptable that there are whole sections, and in Israel the same. It's the Arab section, it's women, it's we don't have Black in Israel, but it doesn't matter. It's just a name. We are a whole section of the population is missing from what's going on. And we became kind of an elitist group that is isolating itself. So this is also our role. So first of all, let's forget about biomedicine, many other roles. Diseases, Africa is decimated, malaria, drought, locust that is now attacking Somalia. What we are doing about it, that is, destroying crops and throw millions of people into starvation to death. And so on and so forth. Poverty. There are numerous, but the issue is, I think that it's again dual. One scientist don't want to do it. They are again isolated in the ivory tower. I don't see scientists, very few scientists go to politics. I myself try to avoid it. I try to have an impact by talking, but myself, I was offered several political positions in Israel. I don't want to be there. Because of many reasons. It's not my world. It's not my language. It's not my world. And also the politicians don't, I think that the collaboration between scientists and politicians is very weak, if not existing in many ways. They will listen to us here and there. Think about the Royal Society in the UK. Think about academies, the US National Academy of Sciences. How much they really consult the government? Nothing. Thin thread. And I think that at the end of the day, the solution, much of the solution will come from science. Either it will be the drought, the climate change, and think about the escape of President Trump from the Kyoto Agreement, from the Paris Agreement on climate change. I mean, this is disastrous. People don't think about it because it looks long-term. It's not COVID that affects us now, but it's affecting us. We are burning the planet. And,
well, yeah. So, and specifically on this question of climate change, there is a contrast there, and indeed it's raised in a question posed by somebody called Roel just now. Why is it that scientists are more trusted when it's a health crisis, such as COVID, than they are when it's a planetary crisis, such as climate change?
I'll tell you why. I think I know why. Later I'll show you, I became a very good friend of the Pope. I have here some photos with the Pope, and even I knew the Polish Pope, John Paul II, from Krakow, actually. We can put into climate change also GMO. Let's put it in the same very pot. And, there is a lot of religious pressure against it. Health is health. What can you do? It's a virus. But GMO and climate change, there is a lot of, first of all, with climate change, there is a lot of industrial interest. You have to change all the industry. You have to make it clean and green. And that requires a lot of investment. So the industrialists are pressurizing the politicians not to pressurize them to lower the emission of carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, and other gases. So there is also commercial interest here, but also religious ones. Because people say, God who created us, whoever God is, everybody has his own God, will not will not allow us to change his creatures, to genetically modified. You know, that's what God created. And the same for climate change. God will not change the climate because he will not harm his constituents. You know, that's it. So, you know, it's religious pressure, it's an economic pressure, and scientists try to convince the politicians that it's going to kill us. But the politicians are under other types of pressure, as I said, religious one, economic one. GMO too. You know, GMO, you know, if you're going to have protected fields that, you know, 10,000 hectares can be processed by one person, what the other people are going to do. I remember being in India, and we traveled in southern India, in Chennai, and I saw hundreds of people are jumping on the road. You know, they're just jumping. Then we got close, and there was wheat there. And they were jumping on the wheat and separating the seeds from the straw. And, you know, they collected the seeds, and the straw went as a food to the cow. And I asked, you know, hey guys, what you're doing here? Bring a combine. It will do it in 10% of, in 1% of the time. And all the workforce of these people, they said, you are crazy, because these people are uneducated. If the combine will come in, they will starve to death because nobody will. So you see, there are many interests here in GMO, because GMO is much more efficient. They are not damaged by all kinds of locusts and climate and all kinds of harming agents and so on. So it's a balance here, and it has to be adapted to the economy, to the region, and so on. But we need to understand that the advantages are far exceeding the disadvantages. And in the case of climate change, it's our lives on the planet, the lives of our children. Children, not grandchildren, children.
So, when you're dealing with people who you disagree with fundamentally, whether it's, I mean, there's a question that's been posed by Macy, which says that, which asks whether scientists have a duty to be more active when dealing with disinformation. But when you're dealing with people you disagree with, I suppose you've got two ways of going. You can be very competitive, you can fight them, or you can try and build some kind of trust and friendship. And it's a difficult one, because it's very frustrating to deal with people who are saying something that you completely disagree with. But on the other hand, we kind of know that people don't listen to people they don't agree with. They don't listen to you if you're not their friend.
In many ways, we are moving on parallel, unmeeting lines.
Yeah.
But what I'm doing, typically, it's going like a discussion, you know, on the podium, and there is an audience. And I resort always to my best friend, and my best friend is science. And I bring scientific facts. I show them the increase in gases. I show them the damage to the earth. I show them the corals in the Great Barrier Reef, how they bleach because of the acidification of the ocean. I show them the beautiful corals, how they look before. I said, it's just the beauty. Forget about anything else. Just diving. Go to dive in the Great Barrier Reef. In Cairns, take a boat out of Cairns and travel to the sea and see what's going on now there. And I show them the depletion of fish from the ocean. And I show them the rise of the sea. You know, how much of the ice in Greenland and in Antarctica is dissolved yearly, how many billions of cubic meters of ice are going. And I show them the height of New York City, of Manhattan, and I told them, you know, you have to imagine that it will happen. People don't believe it, but you calculate. I show them the calculation, the numbers. You know, science has always been my best friend. And I'm very calm down. I'm not combative. I don't call them stupid. I don't tell the people don't listen to them. I never use a rude language. You always go to facts. And I hope that I'm convincing. If the other side he tells you lies about, if he tells you that Antarctica doesn't dissolve and I made the cracks in Photoshops in the ice sheet, you know, there is a limit. What can I do?
So when you've living for your whole life with your friend science, Julia Zeber, who's a PhD student from Jagiellonian University, asks whether you've ever doubted yourself, or is your friend science always there at your side to give you all the belief you need?
It's a difficult question. Poland is Catholic, and Israel is also very religious, and
I,
people are.
I don't know. I don't think. Sorry, it's the way I asked the question. I don't think she's so much asking about religion. I think maybe just her direction, your direction in science. Have you ever questioned your own scientific direction?
I don't think so, because it's my inclination. I'm very weak in mathematics, and I'm very weak in abstracting. I need to see. And I thought that, and I started medicine, and medicine is biology, or it's deviation from normal biology when people become sick. And then I decided that I want to understand why diseases start from the very beginning. I don't want to see the end result, to get a patient that is already had the disease developed to the point that he's sick, because that takes years. I want to go back to the roots. So I've always been into biology. I grew up on the mountain here. I walked out of my home, collected flowers, asked about the colors of the flowers and so on. So I've always been on the biological side, and I realized that mathematics and abstraction is a severe weakness. I'm kind of mathematics dyslexic. So that's what the road took me. And of course, I'm happy with it. The lab is very active now. We are discovering. So I didn't doubt my road, but I have real doubts about, the big science in the world and what's going on in the academia and so on and so forth. It's not, it's not a world of angels.
No, but I suppose so many young scientists have moments of self-doubt when they wonder, is this for me? Have I chosen the right path? That you didn't encounter that.
No, I said that if I'm not going to be good at it, I'll do something else. I need to try it. And that's the fun of life. What is life all about? If not fighting challenges, not fighting, maybe it's a wrong word. If not experiencing challenges and overcoming obstacles. And otherwise, why we are here? It gives me, it may be personal, but I love it.
Okay.
I really love it.
What is life about is a nice introduction to Pavel from Jagiellonian University's question. He says, how do you keep your work-life balance? Is it possible?
How do I keep what?
How do you keep your work-life balance?
I don't know. I've been in this business for more than 40 years, and every day is like the first one. It's like being a gynecologist that brings new life to the world. Students are coming in. I think that the young people around me are my source of not only pride, but also source of knowledge and information that come with all kinds of ideas. Some of them are crazy. I just put them back on the way, but I never suppress them. I tell them, let's try, let's go. We just try to make it more realistic. And I'm surrounded with people who are 40 years younger than I am. It's amazing. And we can still talk to one another. I can hardly talk to my son. He thinks that I'm beyond the mountain, that I'm somewhere, in the haven. And these young people, we talk daily, 40 years younger than I am. It's amazing how we can converse. And it's fun. It's really fun.
I think, Pavel, there you have your answer. I think it's not a work-life balance. I think work is life.
Work is, for me, yes. It's not work. Let me just conclude our conversation. It's not a job. I don't have a job. I have a hobby. I have a hobby. I'm serious about it. Science is my hobby. People ask me what you are doing beyond science. I'm saying I'm doing science. I'm going home. I'm reading papers. It may be boring to people, but it's a whole world. I listen to music. There is a huge collection of CDs here. There is a stereo system, loudspeaker all over my ceiling here above me. I'm listening to music like crazy, but that's in the background. I always say, people, don't ask yourself what will be your future job. Make your job your hobby. And then you will be able to carry it for 40 years with the same enthusiasm. You'll never look at the watch when the day is over. And you will have to have somebody crazy that every month will pay you for that. And that's it. My university is paying me, and I'm doing my hobby, and it's really wonderful, and I'm serious about it. I'm really serious about it, because young people, and that's one advice that I give young people, find it very difficult to change career. And I tell them, look, I changed my career. I started almost from scratch. I had no clue what science is, or almost no clue what science is. But I thought about the next 50 years. And I said, I'm not going to bore myself and to die out of boredom in medicine. You know, it's a matter of taste. You know, I didn't want to be there just because I'm stuck with a class of friends that I started my road with, just because they will gossip that, oh, he's a failure. You know, he thought that he will not succeed. I decided to go after my gut feeling that I need to do something else that will carry me enthusiastically for 50 years and more. And it did work. So why? Because it's a hobby and not a job.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so now let's tackle. We have a few minutes left for the. Let's go in a slightly different direction. Again, a different aspect of perhaps a crisis. Jakob asks, what do you think about the position of publishing companies in science? And you've already mentioned at the beginning of this discussion those retractions. So it's a big issue.
These people push all the sensitive buttons on my piano, on the strings of my heart. I'll talk very briefly about it. I think that the whole culture of publishing nowadays is wrong. It's truly wrong. I think that there should be one pot, one journal, doesn't matter, open. You have to pay only for maintenance of the computers, like +1. I don't want to bring examples from my own world because it may be foreign to part of the audience. You know, the fact that the publishing companies, they are controlling, you know, especially the leading journals, they are controlling the world of science. They decide what will go in and what will go out. And according to what's go in, your grants and your career and your option, and they charge you money. They charge the subscriber. You know, our library is paying millions of dollars a year in order to get back my own papers that the Israeli taxpayer paid for. The taxpayer in the world are paying for the science because most of the universities in Poland as well are public universities. It's the public money that is funding research. You are publishing something, and then a private pocket, a private company, let it be Nature Publishing Group, let it be Elsevier, let it be Wiley, let it be anything, is charging you to buy it back, which is unheard of. It's truly unheard of. Not only that they are controlling it, but they are taking advantage. They are becoming rich out of it. This is just unheard of. I think that the scientists, but we are trapped here because these are, you know, the high impact factor journals are running us because we want to publish there, because this is our grants and this is our public promotion and this is our whatever. So it's kind of a catch-22 issue. I think that we should boycott them, really boycott them, but that needs a worldwide effort and go to a complete, abolish the system, demolish it, and go to a complete open access. There is a big fight. We are moving on it, but very slowly. These are big monsters, the publishers, huge economic power, and people are afraid that, you know, to go and publish something new that doesn't have an impact and so on. But, you know, we should certainly go there. It should be one open pot, open to the whole public. My dog should be able to open it and read the papers. And not only my library that pays a lot. And for the same very paper, my library pays for it, and Oxford pays for it, and Cambridge pays for it, and Harvard pays for it, and the Jagiellonian pays for it, and Warsaw University. It's amazing, you know, think about how many billions of dollars are going in order to read this single paper. People paid for already. It was paid already.
But again, it's an example of your two parallel tracks, because you have at one side the open access movement, which is growing, but on the other side you have the promotion through high impact publication, which is also growing. So that's reinforcing the publishing model, and this is trying to
diverge. You're right. I don't have a magic solution. It needs the action of the entire society. You know, presidents of universities that waste their own money. My university pays $20 million a year, $20 million a year for reading papers in all areas, engineering. I mean, you know what you can do with it? Recruit young faculty, buy equipment. You know what you can do with $20 million? Amazing. And for reading what people paid already for. I mean, there should be a worldwide movement to demolish it. It's moving, but it's moving too slowly. It's really moving too slowly. The system should be changed dramatically. And let me just end up with a metaphor. I'm a physician. And if you have an abscess, you don't treat it with a bandage. You treat it by a scalpel. You go and cut and drain it. You should be abrupt.
Thank you. Okay, well, now we're on these big topics in science. Let's go for funding as well. Lucas wants to know whether you think that the grant giving system is working well for science or needs to be improved.
I think that, grants are, in Israel at least, I don't know the system, and the European system is okay. It's peer reviewed. So the grants are being sent in Israel. Every grant that is nationally funded is being sent to international reviewers, and then there are committees, and the committees are changing every year. So nobody has a permanent position on the committee, so you cannot have friends, and so on. I think that at least in Israel, it's optimal. Of course, people that don't get grants are frustrated, and they always complain, well, I did this, and the reviewer didn't understand it, and so on and so forth. But at the end, it's balanced. You're not living on one grant, and you're submitting and submitting and submitting to different agencies. You try, and at the end, you are successful if you are good. I think that unlike the publishing industry, the granting industry, at least in Europe at large, and in Israel in particular, which I'm close to, is more or less okay. It's balanced. It's okay. And of course, there are binational grants that are collaboration between countries. So you have to have a partner. Israel has a lot of binational agreements, besides being part of the EU, with the UK, with Germany, with France, and so on and so forth. I think that all in all, it's okay. Nothing is ideal.
Okay, well, let's ask you one more huge question, and then we'll come down again. But David asks, what you think is the biggest challenge ahead for scientists? I don't know how you answer that.
I think, it depends. Each area has its own challenges. It's really hard to know. In medicine, I think it's the brain and brain diseases, which are going really to affect us. We are going to defeat cancer. There is no doubt about it. Huge progress. But then aging diseases, so-called, all the dementias, which are going to be a huge burden, economic burden, emotional on families, economic on the economy of health, and so on. So that's, I think, one in biomedicine. Climate change, we talked about it, with all its ramification on drought and heating and agricultural products and so on. So these are the practical ones. There are many others that are, for me, are extremely exciting, whether there is life somewhere, what type of life, how far they are from us, will they be reachable in a lifetime of a human being, because they are thousands of light years from us. So this is amazing, what type of life is there? Are they much more advanced than us? Are they just beginning where we were 300 million years ago? Are those bacteria or superior creatures? Can we meet? So this is, I don't think that, I think that the questions of just curiosity are as interesting and important as the practical questions that we need to answer in order to sustain, to keep our lives on the planet.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting that you answer that question in terms of what are scientific questions, what are questions that remain to be answered. I suppose one could have answered the question about challenges for scientists by saying it's about funding, or it's about publication, or it's about communication, or but no, it's revealing to listen to you basically answer just by listing huge questions that remain.
Huge questions. Just to remind you, which is an interesting question, probably you remember, the dinner speech in the Nobel ceremony of David Gross. And David asked the question, of whether there will be Nobel Prizes, metaphorically, in 1,000 years. Why? Because maybe in 1,000 years we shall know everything. So there will be no discovery. So why to have a prize? And the answer was no. There will be Nobel Prizes in 1,000 and 10,000 million years. And the reason is philosophically, but it's true. For every answer we have, 10 new questions are being opened. And it's like a Babylon tower, it's being, we are climbing up, but the diameter of the tower is broadening and more questions are coming up because with the technological tools and with the instruments that we discover, think about the world of Watson and Crick. They knew a little bit about the double helix. Think how the genetic and the molecular biology revolution, what did it add to us in medicine, in knowledge, in everything, and how we are using it today. It's unexpected, but that's the beauty of it. It's endless. It's really endless.
When we meet a select group of students this afternoon, we can talk about whether this is the best time to be a scientist, but that's for later. Now, as a reward for those who've been with us for the whole time, I think you should pan your camera around and show people what is on the other side of your office, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, it's an interesting office that it's basically my character. Lots of books, library. I like art. Lots of art and some memorabilia from meeting with very nice people. This is a meeting with Rita Levi-Montalcini. She was a very good friend of mine, an amazing Italian lady that got the Nobel Prize for discovering the NGF, the growth factors, along with Stanley Cohen. She died at the age of 102, and we became very, very close friends. She was a Jewish that was persecuted in Italy during the Mussolini time, escaped to the United States, made the achievement there, came to Italy back as a hero. I have some...
I remember meeting Levi-Montalcini when she was 99, and she still had 3 jobs at that point. She was a senator in the Italian parliament. She was running a research institute, and she was running a charity helping women scientists in Africa.
This is an interesting photo. Adam, you're going to like it. It's the burial place of Thomas Hodgkin, a British physician that discovered Hodgkin disease. It's a lymphoma. It's a type of blood cancer. He is buried in Tel Aviv, in Jaffa. He was the personal physician of Sir Moses Montefiore, one of the philanthropist Jews that in the middle of the 19th century came to Israel, and then he got diarrhea and became sick and was buried in a little cemetery in Jaffa. And it says here buried Thomas Hodgkin of Bedford Square, London. And it took me some time to discover the obelisk, and I couldn't even take a photo because it was all red marble. So we took a limestone from the floor of the cemetery. We rubbed it across the tombstone, so the white powder went into the engraved letters. We took the photo and then we cleaned it again. So for me, Hodgkin is a hero, of course, because at that time, you have to understand, physicians didn't have tools. They have their eyes only, no X-ray. Think, X-ray is 1901, then the first Nobel Prize in physics. So it was only observation. I have here on the wall, again, Rita Levi-Montalcini, beautiful photo taken by Peter Batke, my friend, and then 2 photos with 2 popes. You can see it there with the previous one, Benedictus XVI, and the current one, Francis I. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, and now we're coming back down to earth. We almost can see you. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so somehow the camera...
Oh no, we've got you.
Okay, now everything is okay.
Aaron, that was really lovely, and okay, it's not as nice as being together in person, but that was a special benefit of doing this by Zoom.
Okay.
It was really lovely. Aaron, we've used up all our time. it's been an absolute joy speaking to you, and I'm sure the audience has enjoyed it enormously as well. Thank you very, very much indeed for taking the time.
Take care. All the best, guys, and hopefully we'll meet physically sometime soon in the future. It was a pleasure to be with you without seeing you or talking to you directly.
Thank you very much indeed, Aaron. See you soon.
Bye.
Okay. And I'd like to just thank you all for being with us. It's been a pleasure having you here, as Aaron says. It's a shame not to have been able to see you, but we've sensed your presence, and thank you very much for taking part. We'll see you again, hopefully face to face. Bye.